I'm spiritual, but not religious. I think we've heard this very often in our day and age. Maybe even we feel that way ourselves. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Now, what does that mean? It can mean a variety of different things. But one of the things it seems to mean is I have my connection with God, but I don't need rules. I don't need any regulations. I have my connection with God however I imagine God to be, but I don't need the Bible. I don't need the church. I don't need someone telling me what to do or who God is. It's just this mystical thing, I'm spiritual. What does Jesus say today? If you love me, you will keep my commandments. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Everyone wants to love Jesus. He's awesome. Everyone wants Jesus on his own side or her own side. Jesus would never approve this kind of thing. He would allow this or he would do this. What would he do? And so, in a sense, we remake Jesus into our own image of what we think is right. But what does he say? If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Love for Jesus and love for the commandments are inseparable. They're the same. One, the love of commandments, the keeping of the commandments, is a manifestation of the love of Jesus. Now, this is the thing about the commandments, though. Quite often, they appear to us as some kind of an external force. Kind of when you're driving down, in 316 heading to Atlanta, and then it says 55 miles an hour. We know our cars can easily go 70. This is one secular commandment I'm pretty sure most of us at some point, if not every day, have violated. And when do we remember that it's a commandment? When we see, cop. That's when that 55 suddenly takes on a whole new image. There's a with the sports cars, they say how fast can you go from 0 to 100 or 0 to 60. No, how fast can you go from 80 to 55? But the commandment at that point is something external, something that is imposed on us. It's a regulation of the state in order for the common good, obviously, so that we don't have just reckless driving, unless you're in Montana. Montana has no speed limits, apparently. God's law sometimes appears that way, quite often appears that way. A good friend of mine is Italian, very faithful. But he said when he grew up and when he was a teenager, and he first discovered girls, he fell in love. He's like, God's law suddenly seemed like a huge imposition. It's something from the outside that's saying, no. And quite often, in so many areas, that is what the commandments appear to us. As something that is hemming us in, that's constraining us, that is restricting our freedom. And then Jesus appears to be a killjoy. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Wah, wah, wah. The commandments, however, the 10 commandments would be kind of a summary of that. And then you have the Beatitudes, you have the golden rule, you have the great commandment to love God above all things and love your neighbor as yourself. The commandments, however, are given to us who are a sick people. We are ill. And these are the medicines of the path to our healing. And we are so ill that we don't recognize that we are ill, except when we sit down and reflect on our condition, when we give ourselves that space, that silence to actually examine who we are and what's going on. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. But notice what he says after that. I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you always, the Spirit of truth. Another advocate. The word there, parakletos. Someone who is standing by your side as an advocate or a consoler or a counselor. There are many different ways to translate this. The Spirit of truth. And he will be in you. And he will teach you. And he will reveal to you everything that the Father has told me. And he will make the commandments a joy. A joy. When we are in love, the demand that the beloved makes on us is not a burden. The demand that the beloved makes on us becomes a joy, something that we want to accomplish. In fact, it's not something that's pressing us down, constraining us. We suddenly realize that this is how we are actually going to become more alive, more human, more perfect. If you love me, you will keep the commandments. We who have received the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit, we have received him when we were baptized as little squirming infants. We had that competition going on a little earlier with one of those squirming infants in the corner over there. At that point, the Holy Spirit comes into our life. The Holy Trinity dwells in us. And as we grow and as we learn about our life, and we learn to choose good and avoid evil, it is the Holy Spirit in us that guides us, that reveals to us the Father, that makes the commandments a joy and not a burden. The indwelling of the Holy Spirit is one of the doctrines of the church that is a great secret. It is not just the mystics and the saints, the ascetics living on some mountaintop somewhere, the gurus who have access to the Holy Spirit. He is given to each and every one of us who has been baptized. And if we listen to his voice, he will guide us. He will guide us. There's a story of our Holy Father, Pope Francis, that when he first walked into the apostolic palace after he was elected. And a lot of people have praised him. He's not living in the luxurious apostolic palace. He is living in this simple apartment within community and so on. He said the apostolic palace isn't really luxurious. But he said it has a very narrow door. That means he didn't want to be constrained so that people would have to go through gatekeepers to get to him. He wanted to be more accessible. But he walked into the apostolic palace after being elected pope, and he heard inside him a voice that said, "No, not here." Now this is a man of deep prayer who's given his life to Christ. And he knew that was the voice of the Holy Spirit. And he obeyed. That is what it means to be spiritual. That is someone who is led by the Holy Spirit. And this is not just for holy popes. It's not just for ascetics and for mystics, but each and every one of us has access to the Holy Spirit because we have received the Holy Spirit. On that day you will realize that I am in my Father and you are in me and I in you. And whoever loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and reveal myself to him. Jesus will manifest himself when we follow the path of the commandments. He will be a real person, and the Holy Spirit will be a voice that guides us. This is for each and every one of us. This is why, as I keep saying, silence is so important in our life. Quiet, where we can tune out the noise of the world and listen to the voice of the Spirit. And he will speak to us, and we will know him. We will know him because we recognize the voice of the shepherd. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you always. In this Mass, 2 weeks away from the great day of Pentecost, as the readings start preparing us for the reception of the Holy Spirit, for the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, let us ask the Lord to give us the grace to be silent to give us the grace to love Him by loving His commandments, by living His commandments. And to always be open to that subtle, quiet voice that speaks in the depths of our soul, which is the voice of the Holy Spirit, so that listening to Him we can be truly spiritual, that is truly religious.